The crystal chandelier cast fractured light across 200 faces in dress whites. My father's voice boomed through the Naval War College auditorium, steady as always, commanding attention like he'd commanded fleets. My wife, my rock through 30 years of deployments. My son Barrett, now wearing captain's bars himself, carrying forward the Zucker legacy with honor. The applause was polite, expected. I stood in the back, invisible in the crowd despite my captain's uniform, the one I'd never worn in front of them before. My heart hammered against my ribs like sonar pings in enemy waters. And my youngest daughter, Nikki, who is here tonight. He paused. Maybe he was searching for words. Maybe he was about to say something kind, something that acknowledged my presence for once. But before he could continue, a voice cut through the silence, his former aide, sitting in the front row, squinting at something on the wall. "Sir, her name's already on the plaque. 2019 recipient." The silence that crashed over that room wasn't just quiet, it was the kind of devastating hush that comes right before a hurricane hits, when the air pressure drops and every living thing holds its breath. I watched my father's knuckles turn white on the podium, gripping it like a ship's wheel in a Category 5 storm. My brother Barrett's jaw went slack, his perfectly pressed uniform suddenly looking too tight around his collar. And then, like a perfectly choreographed naval maneuver, 200 heads turned as one toward the gleaming bronze plaque mounted on the east wall. There it was. My name. Captain Nikki Zucker, 2019 Distinguished Service Award. The same award my father was receiving tonight. The same award he'd bragged about for weeks. The same award our family had celebrated with champagne and expensive dinners. Except mine happened 4 years ago. And nobody knew. To truly grasp why that moment felt like sweet, silent justice, why it hit with the force of a torpedo striking amidships, you have to dive deep into the 23 years of waves I'd navigated just to get there. Buckle up, because this is my story, told from the bridge of my own life. I'm Nikki Zucker, a woman who's spent her career in the United States Navy, commanding ships and crews through tempests both literal and figurative. And this? This is how I finally dropped anchor on a lifetime of being overlooked. The memory comes back in flashes, sharp as broken glass catching sunlight. I was 7 years old, standing on the dock at Naval Station Norfolk, watching my father's carrier disappear into the gray Atlantic horizon. The smell of diesel fuel and salt water filled my lungs, a scent that would become as familiar to me as my own heartbeat. My brother Barrett stood beside Dad's fellow officers, already tall for his age at 12, his posture mimicking the ramrod straightness of the men in uniform around him. "That's where I'm going someday," Barrett announced, pointing at the carrier. "I'm gonna command one just like Dad." The officers laughed, warm and encouraging. "That's the spirit, young man," one said, clapping Barrett on the shoulder. "With genes like yours, you'll make admiral before you're 50. I tugged on Mom's sleeve. "Can I command a ship too?" The laughter changed, softer, indulgent, dismissive. One officer patted my head. "Sure, sweetheart. You can command a cruise ship full of vacationers." More laughter. Barrett rolled his eyes. Mom squeezed my hand but said nothing. That night, I built a fort in my room out of blankets and pillows, arranged my toy boats in formation, and commanded them through imaginary battles. When Dad came home 6 months later, bronzed and decorated, he found me in the garage, studying his old Naval Academy yearbooks. "What ya doing, Nikki girl?" "Learning about ship classes. Did you know destroyers can track submarines and shoot down missiles at the same time?" He chuckled, ruffling my hair. "Smart cookie. But the Navy's rough, sweetheart. Salt water, long deployments, hard men doing hard work. Not really a place for girls like you." He said it kindly, like he was protecting me from something. "You focus on school, maybe become a teacher. Or a nurse, Navy needs good nurses. Leave the rough seas to the men who can handle them." The words landed like depth charges in my chest, silent but devastating. High school was a masterclass in being invisible. Barrett's acceptance to the Naval Academy came when I was 16, and our house transformed into a shrine to his achievement. Congratulations cards covered the kitchen table. Dad's old Navy buddies called constantly. Mom baked 3 different celebration cakes. I'd just been named captain of the varsity swim team, the first junior to earn it in school history. I'd also scored a 1510 on my SATs and logged 200 volunteer hours at the Veterans Affairs Hospital. My guidance counselor said I was academy material, no question. The night of Barrett's send-off party, I cornered Dad by the grill, where he was holding court with a dozen officers in Hawaiian shirts, beers in hand. Dad, I want to apply to the academy too. He flipped a burger, not quite meeting my eyes. The academy? Nikki, that's ambitious. I have the grades. Coach Anderson said he'd write me a recommendation. I could. Sweetheart. He set down the spatula, finally looking at me. The pity in his eyes was worse than anger. It's different for women. The combat exclusions, the physical standards, and between you and me, a lot of the old brass aren't comfortable with girls on ships yet. You'd be fighting an uphill battle your whole career. He squeezed my shoulder. Why put yourself through that? You're smart, too smart to waste on banging your head against closed doors. Barrett's voice carried from the deck. Dad. Admiral Chin wants to hear about your Gulf War deployment. Coming. Dad called. To me, we'll talk later, okay? But we never did. That night, I lay in bed listening to the party wind down, listening to toast after toast to Barrett's bright future, and I made a decision. If the academy wouldn't have me, or if getting there meant begging for approval from a man who'd already dismissed me, I'd find another way. I researched for weeks, finally landing on a maritime studies program at Old Dominion University with a robust ROTC program. I applied in secret, earned a Navy scholarship, and only told my parents after I'd accepted admission. Dad's response? That's nice, honey. A backup plan is always smart. Mom tried to soften it. Your father just worries. He wants you safe. Barrett's not safe on a ship in the Gulf. That's different. Why? Because he's a man? She didn't answer. She didn't have to. My commissioning day dawned gray and cold, a January morning that matched the temperature in my family. I stood at attention in my service dress blues as Commander Patricia Walsh pinned the gold ensign bars onto my collar. Her eyes were warm, knowing. Welcome to the fleet, Ensign Zucker. Make us proud. Ma'am. Mom sat in the second row, crying happy tears. She'd driven 4 hours to be there. She hugged me after, whispering, I always knew you'd make it. Barrett sent a text, congrats sis. Sorry I can't be there, underway off Jacksonville. Kick ass. Dad called that evening. Hey, kiddo. Sorry I couldn't make the ceremony, had that Navy League symposium in D.C., couldn't reschedule. But I'm proud of you. Really. His voice had that quality, warm but distracted, like he was checking items off a list. So, what's your first assignment? Supply Corps, probably. Or maybe personnel management. The lie came easily, surprisingly so. They're still figuring out my orders. Good. Safe work. That's smart. I stared at my commissioning certificate, the one that said Surface Warfare Officer, unrestricted line. The one that meant I'd be driving ships, not pushing papers. But I didn't correct him. What was the point? That small deception grew roots. It became easier to say logistics than to explain I was aboard the USS Porter tracking drug smugglers in the Caribbean. Easier to nod along when Barrett called from his frigate, regaling the family with stories of pirate chases off Somalia, than to mention I'd just coordinated a nighttime boarding operation that seized 3 tons of cocaine. How's the desk job, sis? Barrett would ask. Steady. Lots of paperwork. the lies became a kind of armor. If they didn't see me, they couldn't diminish what I was accomplishing. If they didn't know, they couldn't compare me unfavorably to Barrett's golden career. Lieutenant. Lieutenant Commander. Each promotion brought new responsibilities, bigger ships, more complex operations. By 30, I was executive officer aboard the USS Vanguard, a guided missile destroyer operating in the Persian Gulf during a time when tensions with Iran kept us at perpetual readiness. The XO position meant I was second in command of 300 sailors and $1.8 billion worth of warship. I stood bridge watches, oversaw training, wrote evaluations, counseled young officers struggling with leadership. When our captain fell ill during a critical transit through the Strait of Hormuz, Iranian fast boats circling like sharks, I took the con for 16 straight hours, navigating diplomatic tightropes and real threats with equal precision. That operation earned me a Navy Commendation Medal. Vice Admiral Kensington himself pinned it on during the ceremony in Bahrain. "Captain Zucker's in your future," he told me afterward. "Mark my words. The Navy needs leaders like you." I flew home for Christmas a week later. The conversation over turkey centered entirely on Barrett's upcoming promotion to commander, early, a clear sign of his trajectory toward flag rank. "How's work, Nikki?" Mom asked during a lull. "Fine. Busy with requisitions and supply chain management. Nothing exciting." Dad nodded absently, then launched into a story about Barrett's frigate interdicting a pirate vessel. "That's real Navy work," he said with obvious pride. "Getting your hands dirty, making split-second decisions. Not like the peacetime Navy I retired from." I bit my tongue and asked for more gravy. They gave me the USS Horizon when I was 35, young for command, especially for a woman in the surface warfare community where the old boys network still thrived in certain corners. But my record was spotless, my recommendations glowing, and the Navy was slowly, grudgingly evolving. The Horizon was an Arleigh Burke-class destroyer, 509 feet of steel and technology capable of tracking dozens of air and surface threats simultaneously while hunting submarines in the depths below. My first day aboard, I stood on the bridge wing as we got underway from San Diego, watching my crew work with practiced precision, and felt something click into place. This was where I belonged. This was what I'd fought for. We deployed to the South China Sea during a period of heightened tensions, Chinese vessels testing boundaries, North Korean saber-rattling, Russian submarines playing cat and mouse in international waters. For 6 months, the Horizon and her crew operated at the tip of the spear, conducting freedom of navigation operations, participating in joint exercises with Japanese and Australian forces, shadowing potential threats. There was one night, classified, so I'll keep it vague, when things got tense. Very tense. The kind of scenario where one wrong move, one misunderstood signal, could trigger an international incident or worse. I stood on that bridge for 11 hours straight, making decisions that kept my crew safe and achieved our mission without escalation. When we returned to port, there were commendations, quiet congratulations from admirals who understood what we'd faced. My fitness reports glowed. Fellow captains sought my advice. Junior officers requested to serve aboard my ship because they knew they'd learn from the best. And at home? Silence. I'd stopped trying to explain. Family dinners became performances where I played the part of successful but unremarkable younger sister, content in Barrett's shadow. It was easier than fighting for recognition I'd never receive. The nomination for the Navy League's Distinguished Service Award came through official channels in late 2018. My commanding admiral called me into his office personally. "Zucker, I've put your name forward for the DSA. Your record speaks for itself, 3 deployments, flawless operations, the mentorship program you started for female junior officers. You've earned this." The Distinguished Service Award wasn't given lightly. Past recipients included secretaries of the Navy, fleet admirals, officers who'd shaped naval strategy for decades. Getting it while still on active duty, still climbing toward flag rank, it was almost unheard of. The ceremony took place in May 2019 at the Naval War College in Newport. Vice Admiral Kensington presided, his voice echoing through the historic auditorium as he read my citation for exceptional leadership, operational excellence, and unwavering dedication to the United States Navy and the sailors under her command. The medal was heavy in my hands, bronze and blue ribbon, weighty with meaning. Afterward, at the reception, admirals and captains I'd only read about approached to shake my hand, share their own stories, ask about mine. "Your father must be bursting with pride," one retired admiral said. "Elias and I served together on the Enterprise. Hell of a officer." "He couldn't make it tonight," I replied smoothly. "Prior engagement." The truth? I hadn't told him. Hadn't told any of them. The invitation had sat on my desk for weeks before I RSVP'd for one, just myself. Because some part of me, the part that still remembered being 7 years old on that dock, being told the Navy wasn't for girls like me, that part wanted this moment to be mine alone. The plaque went up that night, bronze mounted to the War College's Hall of Honor. My name joined the list of recipients dating back to 1948, rendered in gold letters that would remain long after I was gone. I flew home the next day. When Mom called that weekend, asking about work, I said same old and asked about her garden. March 2023 arrived like a squall line on radar, visible from a distance but still capable of surprise when it hit. Mom's call came on a Tuesday afternoon. I was in my stateroom aboard the Horizon, reviewing deployment orders for our upcoming 8-month patrol to the Indo-Pacific. We'd be operating in some of the tensest waters on the planet, and I had 10 days to ensure my ship and crew were ready. "Nikki. Such wonderful news. What's up, Mom? Your brother's promotion to captain came through. The ceremony's in 3 weeks. And your father, oh, honey, the Navy League is giving him the Distinguished Service Award. Can you believe it? After all his years of service, they're finally recognizing him properly." My coffee went cold in my hand. The Distinguished Service Award. The same award whose medal sat in my dresser drawer, tucked away like a secret. That's great, Mom. He deserves it. And he did. Dad's career had been exemplary: carrier command, fleet operations, advisory roles that shaped policy. No bitterness there, just irony so sharp it could cut steel. "There's a family dinner Friday at the Bayview Grill, just us. Can you come? We haven't seen you in months." I stared at the deployment orders. 10 days until we shoved off for 8 months at sea. 10 days that were already packed with briefings, inspections, crew training, maintenance checks. I'll be there. The Bayview Grill overlooked the Chesapeake, its floor-to-ceiling windows offering views of sailboats and the distant gray shapes of naval vessels at anchor. I arrived 15 minutes late, delayed by turbulence and traffic, still wearing civilian clothes, jeans and a blazer that hid the permanent tan line from my uniform collar. Mom hugged me first, her lavender perfume triggering 1,000 childhood memories. "You look exhausted, sweetie. Are they working you too hard?" "Just a busy stretch. Nothing I can't handle." Barrett sat at the head of the table, beard trimmed to regulations, his lieutenant commander's uniform immaculate. Beside him, his wife Kelsey smiled warmly. She'd always been kind to me, perhaps because she'd never quite understood the family dynamics. Dad occupied the power position, back to the window, still commanding a room even in retirement. His hair had gone completely silver now, but his posture remained parade ground perfect. "You're late," he observed. Traffic was bad. I slid into my seat as appetizers arrived, crab cakes and oysters, the kind of expensive spread that marked special occasions. The conversation flowed around me like water around a hole, familiar and excluding. "Tell Nikki about your new command," Kelsey urged Barrett. His eyes lit up. "Destroyer out of Pearl Harbor. USS Fitzgerald, after the ship we lost in 2017, they brought the name back. Big responsibility, but Dad says it's a crucial stepping stone." "That's right," Dad interjected. "Destroyer command at your age, with your record, you play this right, son, and you're looking at Commodore within 5 years. Flag rank by 45. He leaned forward, animated in a way he never was with me. I've been making calls. Admiral Kensington owes me favors from our Enterprise days. He'll be watching your career. The name hit me like a physical blow. Admiral Kensington. The same man who'd presented both our awards, mine 4 years ago, Dad's upcoming. I took a long drink of water. What about you, Nikki? Kelsey asked. How's logistics treating you? Fine. Busy, like always. Lots of supply chain stuff, inventory management. The lies were smooth now, polished by years of practice. Nothing as exciting as Destroyer Command. Barrett laughed, not unkindly. Hey, somebody's gotta make sure we have toilet paper and jet fuel. Unsexy but essential, right sis? I smiled, lifted my glass in mock toast. Keeping the fleet supplied, one requisition at a time. Over dessert, key lime pie that tasted like sawdust in my mouth, Dad shifted gears. His expression became serious, the one he'd worn when discussing mission planning. My ceremony's next Tuesday. Distinguished Service Award, presented by Vice Admiral Kensington himself. 200 guests, most of the local Navy brass, some of my old carrier crew flying in. He looked around the table, his gaze finally landing on me. Families expected to attend. Dress nicely, maybe that blue dress you wore to Barrett's commissioning? Actually, I was thinking of wearing my uniform. The table went quiet for a beat. Dad's eyebrows rose slightly. Your uniform? Do supply officers even have dress uniforms? Barrett joked. We all have dress whites, I replied carefully. Thought it might be appropriate. Well, wear whatever you want, Dad said, already moving on. The ceremony starts at 1900 hours, that's 7 p.m. for you civilians, he added with a wink at Kelsey. Reception afterward. Should be a good night. The conversation drifted to other topics, Mom's garden club, Kelsey's new job, Barrett's house hunting in Hawaii. I excused myself early, citing an early flight, and drove back to my hotel with hands tight on the wheel. The Naval War College's main auditorium was exactly as I remembered it, high ceilings, historical paintings of naval battles, that same bronze plaque on the east wall. I'd seen it 4 years ago, watched them mount it with my name, and felt a quiet pride that needed no witnesses. 200 people in dress whites filled the seats, a sea of Navy tradition and hierarchy. I slipped in near the back, arriving deliberately late, wearing my full captain's uniform for the first time in front of my family. For gold stripes on each shoulder board caught the light. My ribbons told a story anyone who knew how to read them would understand, multiple deployments, commendations, a career of substance. But no one was looking back here. All eyes faced forward as Vice Admiral Kensington took the podium, his voice carrying authority earned over 4 decades of service. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, tonight we honor a man who has given his life to naval service. Rear Admiral Elias Zucker, retired, commanded with distinction during some of our nation's most challenging periods. The speech continued, Dad's accomplishments, his leadership, his dedication. All deserved. All true. I found myself genuinely proud, the old resentment mixing with something softer, more complicated. Then Dad took the podium. He accepted the medal, heavy on its blue ribbon, and began his own remarks. Stories from the Gulf War, reflections on change in the Navy, gratitude to the institution that had shaped his life. His voice was strong, confident, the voice of a man accustomed to being heard. But none of this would have been possible without my family, he continued, and my stomach tightened. My wife Eleanor, my rock through 30 years of deployments, my anchor in every storm. Mom beamed from the front row, and she deserved that recognition, she'd earned it. My son, Barrett, who's made me prouder than words can express. Captain now, commanding his own destroyer, carrying forward the Zucker legacy with honor and distinction. Applause rippled through the crowd. Barrett stood briefly, acknowledged it with a modest nod. And my youngest daughter, Nikki, who? He paused. Maybe searching for words. Maybe about to say something kind, something that finally saw me after all these years. The room held its breath. Is here tonight. Before he could continue, a voice cut through the silence. Commander James Preston, Dad's former aide, sitting in the front row, squinting at the wall behind the podium. Sir, her name's already on the plaque. 2019 recipient. Time didn't just slow, it fractured, each second splitting into smaller moments, crystalline and sharp. I watched Dad's hand freeze on the podium. Watched his head turn slowly toward the bronze plaque, following Preston's pointing finger. Watched his eyes scan the list of names until they found mine, right there in gold letters, Captain Nikki Zucker, 2019. The silence that followed was absolute. 200 people stopped breathing simultaneously. Then the whispers started, building like distant thunder. Officers leaned toward each other, confirming what they were seeing. Several stood for a better view. Someone in the third row gasped audibly. Vice Admiral Kensington's expression transformed from confusion to recognition to something that might have been delight. He leaned toward the microphone. I'm sorry, Admiral Zucker, but Commander Preston is correct. Captain Nikki Zucker received this award in 2019. I presented it myself. His eyes scanned the crowd, finding me in the back, and a smile broke across his face. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, Captain Zucker is here tonight. Captain, would you stand? Every head in the auditorium turned. 200 pairs of eyes found me standing in my captain's uniform, for gold stripes blazing under the chandeliers. I came to attention and rendered a crisp salute. The applause started scattered, then built into something thunderous. Officers who'd served with me, who knew my reputation, led the standing ovation. I remained at attention, face neutral, as years of being invisible suddenly reversed in a single, shattering moment. From the podium, Dad stared at me. His face cycled through emotions too quickly to track: shock, confusion, realization, something that might have been shame. Beside him, Vice Admiral Kensington was grinning openly now. Ladies and gentlemen, it seems the Zucker legacy runs even deeper than we knew. Not one but two Distinguished Service Award recipients in the same family. Remarkable. Barrett had twisted in his seat, his expression pure shock. Kelsey's hand covered her mouth. Mom sat frozen, tears already starting down her cheeks. Dad's voice cracked slightly as he tried to continue his speech. Nikki, I didn't. He stopped, started again. My daughter has apparently achieved more than I realized. His legendary composure wavered. I'm very proud. The rest of his speech was mechanical, the words coming but the life gone from them. He accepted his medal, posed for photographs, but his eyes kept finding me across the room. The reception was chaos barely contained by naval decorum. Officers I'd served with surrounded me, sharing congratulations and stories. Admirals I'd briefed during operations sought me out. Young female officers, some I'd mentored, thanked me for blazing trails. Through the crowd, I saw Mom making her way toward me, Dad and Barrett in her wake. The three of them moved like a ship's formation, uncertain but determined. Mom reached me first, her hug fierce and desperate. Why didn't you tell us? All these years, we thought. I'm so sorry, sweetheart. I'm so sorry. It's okay, Mom. It's not okay. She pulled back, gripping my shoulders, her eyes red. You've been commanding destroyers, earning awards, doing everything your brother does, more, and we acted like you were filing paperwork in an office somewhere. What kind of mother doesn't know her own daughter's accomplishments? The kind whose daughter lied to her for 2 decades. I said it gently, without accusation. I made it easy for you to not see me. Barrett stepped up next, his swagger gone, replaced by something humbler. Sis, Jesus, I've been patronizing you for years. How's the desk job? I'm such an asshole. You didn't know. I didn't ask. There's a difference. He shook his head. Destroyer command at 35? That's extraordinary. And this award, for years ago. He gestured at the plaque. I should have known. Should have paid attention. Then Dad was standing before me, this man who'd loomed over my entire life like a storm front, suddenly looking smaller. Older. His shoulders weren't quite as square as they'd been an hour ago. Nikki. My name came out rough. I don't have words for how badly I've failed you. Dad. No, let me say this. He took a breath, and I realized his hands were shaking slightly. When you were 7, you asked if you could command a ship. I laughed. I thought I was protecting you from disappointment, from a career that wouldn't accept you. But really? His voice cracked. Really, I was protecting myself from having to acknowledge that you might succeed where I thought you'd fail. That you might prove everything I believed about women in the Navy was wrong. You're a product of your time, I offered. That's not an excuse. That's a cop-out. He glanced back at the plaque. Captain at 35. This award. Kensington told me over drinks earlier. He pulled me aside, said you're on the short list for Commodore, possibly Admiral. Said you're one of the finest officers he's ever worked with. Dad's eyes were wet now. And I was standing there nodding, proud as hell, thinking he was talking about Barrett. I didn't even consider that it could be me. I'm sorry doesn't cover it. I stole years of celebration from you. Milestones we should have acknowledged, promotions we should have toasted. You got them alone. The truth of it sat between us, heavy as an anchor. But as I looked at this man, flawed, stubborn, shaped by a navy that had taught him women belonged ashore, I felt the anger I'd carried for decades start to lose its edge. I wasn't completely alone, I said quietly. I had good commanding officers. Mentors who believed in me. Crews who followed me. And honestly, part of me needed to do this without family watching. Needed to prove to myself that I could. You've proven it. He reached out hesitantly, and I let him take my hand. I know I don't deserve it, but if there's any way to make this right, start by seeing me. Really seeing me, not just as your daughter but as Captain Zucker. And maybe, I squeezed his hand. Maybe help other fathers see their daughters the way you're seeing me right now. 2 days later, the USS Horizon departed San Diego for the Indo-Pacific, and I stood on her bridge wing as my crew took us through the channel toward open ocean. My phone had been buzzing constantly since the ceremony, calls from Dad, Barrett, even cousins I hadn't heard from in years, all suddenly aware I existed. I'd answered some, let others go to voicemail. There would be time to rebuild those relationships, or maybe there wouldn't. Either way, I was okay. Because here's what I'd learned through 23 years of silent valor: you can't force people to see you. You can only do the work, live your truth, and trust that eventually, whether through dramatic revelation or quiet recognition, those who matter will open their eyes. 8 months at sea stretched ahead of me, operations in waters where mistakes could have global consequences. My crew trusted me to bring them home safe. Allied forces counted on the horizon to be where we said we'd be, doing what we said we'd do. That was the job. That was the calling. As the California coast disappeared behind us and the horizon opened up endless and blue, my XO approached with the watch schedule. Captain, all departments report ready for sea. Very well. Set modified condition 3. Let's take her west, XO. Aye, Captain. The ship beneath my feet thrummed with power, 9,200 tons of steel cutting through Pacific swells. My name was on her orders, my signature on every operation we'd conduct. For 100 miles behind us, my name was on a bronze plaque in a hall of honor. And finally, my name was in my family's understanding of who I am. Looking back now, I wouldn't change how it happened. The quiet years taught me that validation from within is stronger than any medal, any recognition. But I won't lie, watching those 200 faces turn toward me, seeing my father's eyes truly see me for the first time in 38 years, that felt good. If you've ever felt invisible in your own story, know this: you can etch your name where it counts, even if no one's watching. Especially if no one's watching. The work is its own reward. The truth eventually surfaces. And sometimes, the sweetest victory is the one you don't have to fight for, the one that simply presents itself, quiet and undeniable, like your name on a plaque that's been there all along. Until next time, fair winds and following seas.